You know, we knew we were totally legit. You know, we weren't. You know, I was being Tommy Chong. You know, and then they kept losing control of the whole situation because my wife said, Shelby, she goes, excuse me, are you going to be here long?
Because we have to have breakfast.
Yeah, we have to have coffee. I want my coffee.
That's right. She wanted to go to Starbucks or one of the coffee places. Did they let her do that?
Well,
did they allow her out of the house?
They had because they kept saying, you're not under arrest. And she says, well, if we're not under arrest, then can we go? And they said, well, if you leave, you can't come back, you know, till we're finished. And she goes, so? What are we afraid you're going to steal something from us? They were already carting out my computers and whatever cash they could find.
Right.
You know? And so they kept losing control of the situation. And then they finally had to say, well, okay, this is why you're being, you know, rousted the way you are. And they said it's about the glass company, the bongs.
The bongs at the glass company, because
Chong Glass,
and you were sending them across state lines?
Yeah, that was the charge, one count of sending them across the state lines, using the Postal Service for drug.
Okay.
You know.
When did you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach that this wasn't going all that well? Maybe you should call a lawyer. Perhaps you were in deep trouble.
You know, I was really looking forward to you know, challenging the marijuana laws in court. I've been looking forward to it, you know, because it's a ridiculous law, you know, and I see Canada went backwards, you know, with this new Bush-like guy you got in power now.
That's what you call him?
Yeah.
Not a fan?
Not a fan. Well, he stopped the funding on medical marijuana, you know. Here, it took us, what, 50 years to get to the point where they're finally going to do a study and find out how good marijuana really is. And by the way, they shouldn't call it marijuana. That's its racist name, you know. They should call it hemp, like they used to do it when it was legal. You know?
It was one of the greatest cash crops in America.
Yes.
Once in North America.
Yes. And not for the bud, but for the fact that it made clothing and made food and made denim jeans. I mean, you know, I mean, it's a miracle plant.
In one of your interviews, and I don't think it was the one with Jay Leno, in one of them you said, well, let's decriminalize everything but alcohol.
Well, hey, alcohol is the biggest killer of people.
It is the biggest killer
on the planet.
There's no question. Take me back to the charge. What was the final charge? How did you land in the slammer?
I pled guilty to one count of transporting, conspiring. That's the big conspiring to transport drug paraphernalia across state line. And for that, the penalty is like up to 1 year in jail and $1 million fine or something like that.
Had you ever been in jail before?
Not officially, you know. Cheech and I used to go and perform. We performed at San Quentin, and we performed at Chino and a few other major prisons. No, I'd never really done time, you know, serious time.
The last night before you went to jail, what was running through your mind?
It was, well, you know, you're in denial. People, you know, like the Enron people, you know, they're in denial. You're in denial until they actually slap the cuffs on you and you're going to jail. Up until then, your lawyers are telling you that you're going to, you can appeal. And I'll talk to so-and-so, and maybe if you give me more money, I'll see what I can do. So I was in, the last night was sort of like, it wasn't as weird. It's still in denial. You still can't believe it's happening. And then Vanity Fair paid for a limousine to take me to jail. And so we had a...
The magazine, was that Steve from Vanity Fair?
Yeah, Gabarino, yeah, Steve Gabarino. And so, yeah, so he showed up, you know, we stopped and got Starbucks, we got a limo, and we're on our way to jail, and we got pulled over for speeding.
No, so, I mean, it's so ridiculous. Yeah. Vanity Fair hires a limo, takes you to jail because they want to do the story.
They wanted to do the story.
Obviously.
Which they did, and they never printed it. They never published it.
Graydon Carter's, the editor's a brave guy. They never printed it.
No, they never did. I have no idea. It's a good story.
That's a story in itself.
Yeah, it is. I asked around, you know, because I knew a few of the writers in that, and they said, oh, we're going to, but something preempted it. Who knows?
Who went with you to prison?
My wife, Shelby, and Steve, and the limo driver. Yeah.
and the limo driver. And it seems to me, as I remember from the I Chong, the guard who put the cuffs on you said,
He
"I'm really
apologized.
sorry about this, but it's procedure, and
Yeah.
I have to do it."
Yeah, he apologized. When I was in jail, they would apologize the whole time I was there.
I'm sure most of them knew who you were.
They all knew. They all knew. They had a rule that the guards weren't allowed to take pictures or to associate with me.
No celeb photos?
Yeah, no celeb photos.
You were in a cushy jail, were you, Taft?
It was-
When I say cushy, no jail's cushy because your freedom's been taken away.
Yeah.
But
As cushy
there are
as-
some better than others.
I was in a jail that was built by Republicans for Republicans. It was like
Private jail?
Well, it was all, yeah. Well, they're all privately owned. And I was in a minimum security camp, they call it. And it was the kind they designed for the Watergate people, you know, the Nixon gang. See, when Nixon got in trouble, they never had any cushy jails for these guys. And so they had to build them. And the jail I was in had tennis courts, a running track, a soccer field, weightlifting facilities, a pool room, a library. They had a ceramics area for a while. They took that away.
Why? Because you made a few pots, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Clay pots?
Yeah, I did. And then they have a garden area, beautiful gardens, because all the pot growers, you know, that were in jail, they all
Yes.
worked in the garden, so the gardens were phenomenal.
But you were a newbie, as they say.
Yeah.
There are some elite prisoners
Yeah,
who have been there a while.
yeah.
What were they like?
They were great. I mean, they were so interesting. I mean, so the minute I went in there, I had one bad half hour. And then after I made peace with myself, I started looking around because I'm a writer. So I started, you know, getting stories and looking at material. And I counted the doctors, for instance. There were 8 doctors, and one was an HIV specialist, world-renowned HIV specialist. And he was doing time. In fact, we were sweeping cigarette butts together, and this guy was this genius HIV guy. And I got gout while I was in there because of the food. And before I hit my cubicle, I had 4 different doctors tell me what was wrong with me.
Really?
Yeah.
Gout?
Just by the way I was walking, they go, "Oh, hey, Tom, you got gout. Here, take this to the infirmary."
So the food's not all that good.
Food was terrible.
And you have
Food was
lots of spare time.
The reason the food
in
was
prison.
bad, it was mostly sugar. It's like a diet. It's like a McDonald's diet now. You
Right.
know. It's sugar and starch, and you know the
Right.
the
It doesn't make
saturated
sense.
Fat, saturated fat. You know.
I know.
And so it's the worst food. People were walking around with big guts. You know, even though they had exercised, they had all these extended stomachs. They looked like Africa, you know, with these kids, you know, with the big guts. It's from the food. So I started fasting one day a week, and then I was eating I had my own private cook, you know.
Really? What do you mean? Your own private cook?
Well, we teamed, in jail there's a hierarchy, you know, and the more famous you are, the richer you are, the less work you do. You have everybody hired to do things for you. You know, I had people cleaning my cell for me, making my bed, although I made my bed myself, cooking, so we could, you know, the only thing I had to do is wash dishes after the cook. But the cook, you know, we could buy stuff from the commissary, and healthy stuff,
Right.
and then get stuff from the garden, so we had the best meals there.
You met a man they called the medicine man, a Lakota, Sioux Lakota.
Yeah. Well, he was part, I don't know if he was Lakota, but he was part Indian. He was mostly Spanish, David Ayala. And he was the sweat lodge leader. He was the leader of our sweat lodge.
This is all in the joint.
Yeah, in the joint, yeah. See, the American Indians, they sued the federal government for their right to practice their religion. And it's not really a religion, it's a way of life. It's
Right.
like the Tao, you know. But anyway, right across America, they have sweat lodges. And the sweat lodges, you know, where you have the fire, you have to have a fire pit.
Right.
And so we had fire, and we had Indian campgrounds in the back of the prison. And it was great because if you faced away from the prison, you were like back in time and like living in a beautiful forest and with a fire going, and oh, it was great. Because
Sounds like you
cook
didn't
stuff,
have
you know.
all that bad a time.
I actually had a really good time. In fact, my wife used to visit me, and so, you know, and she'd be all messed up from having to deal with the everyday world, and I'd be all tanned, you know, talking to her. Well, listen, honey, I gotta go sweat, you know.
I have to go to the sweat lodge, and then I have to go for my run.
Yeah.
As long as you stay in the lines, you're okay. The food wasn't so good, but what about the boredom? There must have been a heavy boredom factor.
No, because I only had 9 months to do.
Right,
and
you knew
so
that.
I had a lot of things to do. So what I would do, I'd learn all these different prison games, like bocce ball and casino, the card game, and that took time went by like that.
Right.
There, when
Were
you're
you
playing
ever
cards.
afraid?
No, of my own personal thing. No,
No fear.
not at all.
Because it was an easier prison, or
I was a famous
why?
guy. It was like going home with my fans, you know.
Okay, resist not evil.
Yes, I learned that. I learned I learned the power of passivity. I learned how to, you know, that there's more power in waiting than there is in doing. It's an amazing thing. Yeah.
Drugs in prison, obviously available.
Much as you want. I got offered almost every day, and then I would get tested right after the offer. So they were trying to bust me. They had a lot of snitches in the prison. Every prison has snitches.
Of course.
And they're spies, and they work for the guards, and they work for the administration. And they were trying to bust me. They were trying to get me to be the character they thought I was.
Did you ever think about somehow when you got out, coming back to Canada? I don't know if you can do that. Are you a naturalized
No, I'm
American?
no,
You're still
not-
a Canadian, you're a dual citizen?
Yeah, dual citizen.
Did you think, when I get out, Shelby and I are going to go back to the dog patch in Calgary, if there is still a dog patch in Calgary?
I wrote about, we considered running up to Canada instead of going to jail. And we just considered it. But no. You know, after I paid after I did my time in the States, they're not going to get rid of me. No, I'm going to be down there just like I am now, you know, talking every chance I get, telling them, you know, what idiots they have in office, you know.
You went on Jay Leno.
Yeah.
Directly,
Right
not
from jail.
directly from jail. Was it directly from jail?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was great. It was weird because I got to say hi to all my friends in the joint, and you know, I went from sitting there with everybody else. You know, there's like a television room, you know, where they have different TVs up there. Most of them turned to sports, but they were all there, and I knew they would be sitting there. You know, and I was there 9 months sitting watching TV with the rest of them, and then next thing I know, I'm on Jay Leno going, "Hi, how are you doing?" You know?
We still haven't evolved to a state of intelligent peace, but someday we may or may not.
Yeah.
There you are. How did he respond?
Jay was well, you know, they're worried about ratings, you know.
Yeah.
So Jay had me on when it was hot, you know. But then recently for the book, he wouldn't have me on. And he wouldn't have me on for the book. You know, when you're
Because he'd
hot, you're
already
hot.
told the story, and
I guess so, and you know, and their sponsors and that, they're worried about, you know, a pothead being on, you know, selling the book about how terrible this government is. You know?
the Pope of Pot, the Prince of Pot. No, the
Yeah.
Prince of Pot is Mark Emery. You're the Pope of Pot. Do you smoke much dope anymore?
I haven't smoked really seriously for 3 years now. I had a little celebration when I got off probation, when I could legally do it. I was in Qualicum, and a friend of mine over there, you know, gave me a nice little BC bud, and I took that up, and I enjoyed it like you wouldn't believe.
Where is
But I don't smoke now.
You don't smoke now.
No.
I know you salsa dance.
Yeah, I dance and salsa dance and tango. Tango, that was my love. I love tango.
Oh, tango's great.
Oh, the
Have you ever
best.
been to one of the real places
Oh,
in
sure.
South America?
We were down. We did 10 days.
Oh,
in-
Luang, what are they called? Not Luang. Where's our South American?
Milongas.
Milonga.
Milongas.
Milongas, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll tell the salsa story when we come back because that's a good one.
Yeah.
Tommy Chong, the I Chong, Meditations from the Joint. We'll come back. The legendary, beloved stoner comedian, salsa dancing Tommy Chong is visiting Studio 4. He is older, wiser, and officially an ex-con who has written a book called The I Chong, Meditations from the Joint. Do you have any trouble crossing borders?
Not at all.
That's amazing. The whole thing sounds like you made it up.
Oh, yeah, it does. It
Really?
does. I got busted one time coming across the border with a pipe. And this is when Canada was, this is before the 9/11, and this is when Canada, for some reason, was, they're trying to stop all the potheads from coming into Canada. And I had a little pipe. Usually I carried my pot in my guitar case, and I'd have it on my shoulders, and I'd have the pot up on the top. And so
You're telling
the dogs,
all your secrets.
well, I don't care. The dogs never find it that way, But I forgot I had a pipe in my pocket. I carved pipes too, and so the dog found the pipe, and the Canadian that bought me knew he was a fan, and he was from Nanaimo, and so he was kind of embarrassed about it all. So, but he still had to do the whole. Do you have any drugs and everything? And so I told him about the bud I had and everything. And he took me in the room and searched me and did that whole thing. And then he says, "Okay, you can go." And I says, "Oh, aren't you going to charge me with anything?" Because again, I was looking to try to get a platform so I could do my anti-pot law thing, And he said, "No." I said, "Well, that's weird." He says, "Well, you're a Canadian, so we can't stop you from coming into Canada. And you have an American passport, so they can't stop you from going back into America." So I said, "You mean I can carry pot?" And then he goes, "Oh, please don't do that."
Please don't tell anybody that. Salsa dancing. Why did you take up salsa?
My wife started dancing salsa before I did. I thought she was doing some kind of geeky ballroom thing, and so she could tell me. She says, "Do you want to learn salsa?" And I said, "Nah, you go ahead." And so she studied for, with a dancer, local guy, Nestor, for
Here in Vancouver?
Yeah, Vancouver for a couple of months. We were living here. And, and I'm doing my thing, and then she got so good that Nestor wanted to use her as a partner. So they had a show down here somewhere. And she said, "Oh, you got to come to see me dance with Nestor." And I still thought it was a ballroom thing, And I said, "Oh, okay," And then I noticed that when she's ready to go out, she puts on this short little skirt, and kind of sexy looking, hardly any clothes.
Mama.
Yeah, and I said, "Oh," and I thought about it, and then I saw her dance with Nestor, and man, I got so jealous I couldn't talk. I mean, they weren't looking at me. They were looking at each other's eyes. They're dancing. They're sexy. He's twirling her around, and her little dress is going up, and you can see all these gorgeous legs. And then at the end of the dance, and he flips her around on the floor, and everything. And he's looking at her. And then he dips her down, and he's looking at her like, "Oh, I want to do it to you so bad, baby." And then finally, at the end of the dance, he flips her upside down, and her legs are sticking in the air, and the dress comes down, and you see these beautiful legs and this beautiful body and this little. I was like, almost had a heart attack. I almost jumped out of the chair. "What are you?" and then the only thing I could say, she comes over, she goes, "What do you think?" And with Nestor, and Nestor's got this, he's from Bolivia, and he's got
steamy.
this dark, brooding eyes, and every girl that dances with Nestor falls in love with him. And I could see why, and oh my God. And so I said, she said, "Well, what do you think?" "Oh, you're good." My voice was cracking. And so that day, I told Nestor, "I got to learn this dance."
Salsa 101.
So I studied with Nestor. I went on a cruise with him.
Come on.
A salsa cruise.
Just you and Nestor?
Nestor, that's all.
And you caught up?
And a whole bunch of other salsa dancers. There's a gang of us who
Right.
used to hang out here. And I learned how to dance salsa. It took me 2 years, but I did it.
Where's Cheech in all of this? When was the last time you saw him?
on duets, trying to sing.
Oh, My, I haven't seen it, but somebody saw it and they said, "Oh, Cheech is a much better comedian than he is a singer."
They kept begging him, Cheech, don't sing, be funny, don't sing. Then he was on, I don't know, 5 weeks or something. Every time they'd say, well, what do you think? They would say, well, give it up, stop, don't do it anymore. He got dissed by Marie Osmond. I mean, how embarrassing is that?
Marie Osmond
Cheech and Chong
dissed him?
getting dissed by Marie Osmond says, well, Cheech, you're a nice guy, but you should really stop singing. Don't
Donnie
sing.
would diss Cheech. I hear it
Yeah.
too, because, oh, I can't well duets. There you are, you would never do it. And you can sing.
Well, no, I can't
Well, you can
sing.
play the
I
guitar.
I can play. I can try to sing.
Well, what about when you're
not
in
sing-
the shades?
Well, yeah, but I mean that's background and that's for money, But I'm not going to stand up there
Right.
and compete.
But the Shades Rhythm and Blues, little Rhythm and Blues. When did you start that band? Calgary?
Shades was in Calgary, yeah, 56.
56, and then here.
And then we had
Bobby
Bobby
Taylor?
Taylor and the Vancouvers, yeah. So that was the problem, When I met Cheech, I'd just gotten, I'd played with Bobby for years, and so when I heard Cheech sing, I said, man, we better do comedy, because Bobby's such a phenomenal singer, and then Cheech is, well, he's okay, but he loses the breath and he loses the tone, so the note goes. It's like bagpipes, If you don't have
Yes.
the breath,
Well, yeah, in the music world, he sings flat.
Yeah.
Way flat.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't hear himself. Is his hearing okay?
I don't think so. He looked weird, man. And he's dressed weird. He lost a lot of weight, and so his clothes look baggy on him. He's got this little hat. He was singing with El Giro. You got to see it, man. He puts on his hat. He looks like, I don't know.
Give
Looks
it
weird.
up, Cheech.
It looks weird.
Trust me, but you had a bond, as you once said. It's like being married to somebody when you're on the road
Oh,
them
with
as
Cheech?
much
Oh,
with Cheech.
We were so tight. I never got over the split up, because here we are, we were making millions of dollars. I understand Martin and Lewis, when they broke up.
Right.
Jerry was like, because he was hurt.
Sure.
Be-
And
because
performers
Dean-
understand that magic bond. It is a magic bond, and performers understand it. Many people don't because they haven't lived it.
Well, a lot of people, it's weird how people, there are people that destroy relationships,
Yes.
People in power, and that's what happened with Cheech and I. The president of Columbia Pictures destroyed us. He offered Cheech a movie without me, he said, and he played up to Cheech's ego, says, hey, how'd you like to do a movie without Chong, and do and then maybe later you can sing on duets,
Right. And that came true.
Yeah, well,
But
they didn't like me, because I directed, wrote, and I was, I knew what was good for Cheech and Chong.
But you let Cheech go first. Cheech and Chong. It was never Chong and Cheech.
Never. It was always, well, that's, that's the way, I wanted things to be. Just like my wife and I, we got a comic strip coming out now, and I call it Shelby and Chong. Same
Shelby
reason.
and Chong. Oh, you've been married how long? 30-some years? It's been quite a while.
Well, she doesn't like to say because, they're women in their age, but we've been together a long time.
Well, she was so young when you met.
Oh,
You
she
met
was.
here in Vancouver, did
Right
you not,
in
at the
Vancouver.
club your parents owned?
Well, yeah.
Didn't the parents own?
Well, they worked there.
Or worked there, or you owned it?
My brother and I, tax-wise.
Family biz.
We don't know who owns it.
Somebody owned it.
Somebody owned it. We worked there. I met her out at White Rock. We were playing a dance, and she came. She was really young, and still in high school, and she came to the dance. And when she walked in the door, my heart went, fell on the floor, and we've been in love ever since.
But she didn't come to see you, as I recall, and
No.
I think you wrote it in here. She came to see the
The
other,
singer.
the singer who
She
was
came to see the black guy.
a black man, and
Yeah.
she thought black men were swell, and they are,
Yeah.
of course. It has nothing to do with color, but she thought,
Yeah,
Maybe.
I just kept getting in her face, and so she finally goes, "Oh, okay."
you're persistent, aren't you? That
Well,
persistent guy.
yeah.
Your parents raised you to, well, your dad said to you, I think when you were young, and get a job,
Yeah.
one thing, but you started your first home, converted chicken shack.
I found the picture of it. It's pretty incredible. yeah. It was I don't remember it. You know, I was a brand new baby, but yeah, it was. He bought a farm, a chicken farm, and the only livable place was they had to convert a chicken shack, and they converted it until they fixed the house. That's what it was. They had to live in the chicken shack until the house was livable, and the house was like a log cabin, you know, one room log cabin, and my dad wasn't a farmer, so he finally got out of that business. Luckily, because they found oil on that land just after he sold it. You know,
After he sold it?
Well, he gave it up back to the government. It was a homestead.
Okay, so he didn't have the oil rights.
No.
What do you miss about your mom?
Oh, I miss her quietness. You know. I'd come home after I was growing. I'd come home when I was living at home, and she'd hear me in the kitchen, and she knew something was bothering me, and she'd get up.
One of my favorite chapters in the I Chong is when your mother died, and you and your father were together.
Yeah, yeah. That's when he started telling me things that he never told me before.
Yeah.
Because I took advantage of it. I started asking him how they met and everything, and yeah, he told me he was so devastated when she died, and although they fought like the last 20 years of their life, they just nattered at each other for 20 years.
It's familiar, don't you know?
Yeah, and they would fight silently sometimes too.
Well, she was Scots-Irish, right?
Scotch-Irish, yeah. And he was full Cantonese, Chinese.
And a mixed marriage in those days would have been difficult at times.
You know, you would think, my dad was so tough, and he never looked for trouble, but no one messed with him. Nobody messed with him.
Did you think about him in prison? Like, nobody messed with Dad, nobody's messing with me, or not?
Well, it's not a tough thing. In prison, it's not a tough thing. In prison, what you do, you don't make eye contact. And what you do, you find some weird thing to do, and people think you're crazy and they'll leave you alone. With me, I did a tango walk. I would walk like a tango dancer. And so people would just give me that look like, oh, he's crazy. And that's what they respect in prison. If you're weird, like one guy there, he made a map of the United States out of rocks and plants and the desert. And that's all he's been doing. And they let him do it. The prison officials let him do it.
So just act weird.
Yeah.
And that wasn't hard for you.
No.
You've been doing that a long time.
I'm a comedian.
It's natural. It's so natural.
Yeah, and I know people are watching, so you act a little crazier,
How nice to see you.
You too, dear.
Okay.
Beautiful.
The I Chong, Meditations from the Joint, Tommy Chong. Coming up, environmentalist, activist, teacher, and politician Adrienne Carr is leaving the BC Greens. I doubt she's retiring to her Sunshine Coast backyard, but we'll find out next.